It was a cold Monday morning in late January. The kind that settles in your bones and makes every breath feel like glass. I was still wearing the same jeans from 2 days ago, still clutching the overnight bag I'd packed in a panic, when my husband collapsed in the kitchen. The flowers in my other hand, roses and lilies from his coworkers, had wilted in the back seat overnight. My eyes were swollen, lips cracked from too much crying, and too little sleep. Hours ago, I had watched my husband, Ethan, slip away in the cardiac unit of St. Joseph's Hospital. I was not ready to walk into the silence of our house, but I also wasn't ready for what I saw instead. I stepped onto the porch and slid my key into the front door. It jammed. I pulled it out, tried again. Nothing. My stomach tightened. I reached for the spare key we kept under the loose porch stone. Still no luck. It was as if the lock had forgotten me, or worse, had rejected me. Then I saw the curtains. The white linen ones I had hemmed myself were gone. In their place were heavy velvet panels in an ugly floral pattern I'd never seen before. I leaned forward, squinting through the narrow space between fabric and wall. Inside, the living room was cluttered with cardboard boxes. A pink velvet pillow sat on my favorite reading chair. A delicate floral teacup rested on the coffee table. And there she was. Diana Whitaker, my mother-in-law, wearing a navy cardigan and sipping tea from the wedding china Ethan and I had saved for years to buy. Across from her, folding throw blankets like she owned the place, was Josie, Ethan's younger sister. They were laughing. They were moving in. Like I didn't exist. Like Ethan hadn't died 12 hours earlier. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder, my fists trembling. Finally, the door cracked open. Diana filled the frame. Poised, calm, her arms crossed like she had been rehearsing this moment. "Lillian," she said, tilting her head. "Didn't expect you so soon." "What's going on?" I asked. "Why can't I open the door?" "Because, dear," she said smoothly, "you don't live here anymore." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "This house belongs to Ethan, my son, not you," she said. "There was no prenup, no children, no real contribution on your part. It's time this house returned to his real family." For a moment, I thought the cold I felt was just the wind, but it wasn't. It was her. I wiped a tear from my cheek and looked her straight in the eye. "You have no idea what you've just stepped into." 2 years earlier, almost to the day, I sat on that same front porch, this very one, watching Ethan pace the yard, hands in his hair. His startup had just collapsed. The bank had frozen his business accounts, his credit score tanked. January had always been hard, but that one was colder, darker. "They might take the house, Lil," he had said. His voice cracked on the last word. Ethan wasn't a weak man. But that day I saw him cracked open in a way I had never seen before, and I made a decision. The next morning, without telling a soul, I got dressed, drove to the local credit union, and started the refinance process. I moved the mortgage into my name using the small nest egg I'd been saving since I left my interior design job 10 years earlier. I didn't tell Ethan, not out of secrecy but out of love, out of protection. He never asked where the mortgage confirmations were going. He was too busy trying to recover physically, emotionally. I kept the lights on, paid the water bill, budgeted the groceries, repainted the hallway when the paint started to peel. I let him feel like things were okay, because I knew he needed that. Diana, of course, never knew. She only visited for holidays. She hated the South, thought Savannah was too soft, too slow, too forgiving. I'd hear her voice floating through the guest room, sharp and critical. "Ethan, you were meant for more than this. More than floral wallpaper and street jazz." And Ethan, God bless him, would smile his tired smile, and later in bed whisper to me, "She just doesn't understand peace." I never wanted to confront her, not back then, and not even now. I just wanted to come home, to grieve in silence, in the only place that still smelled like him. Instead, she had changed the locks, claimed the house, claimed the air inside it. I remember sitting in my car after that confrontation, parked across the street, too stunned to move. The cold crept into my coat sleeves, and still I didn't start the engine. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there. Because how do you process becoming a widow and homeless in the same day? Eventually, I drove to a rundown motel, just off Highway 204. The room smelled like bleach and old carpet, but at least it was quiet. I checked in using Ethan's emergency credit card, the last one still active. And then I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to his final voicemail. On loop, until my hands went numb. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the motel bed with the lights off, staring at the popcorn ceiling. My eyes were dry but my throat burned. Every few hours I'd play Ethan's voicemail again. His voice soft, tired, said he'd be home soon. Said not to worry. That was it. His last words to me were about coming home. And now I had none. By morning I felt hollowed out like a shell moving on autopilot, but something inside me stirred. I don't know if it was anger or instinct, but I found myself calling the funeral home. "Good morning," a kind voice answered. "St. Matthew's Memorial. This is Margaret." "Yes," I said, my voice steadier than expected. "This is Lillian Whitaker. I need to update the guest list for Ethan Whitaker's service." "Of course, Mrs. Whitaker. What changes would you like to make?" I didn't hesitate. "Please remove Diana Whitaker and Josie Whitaker from the list." There was a pause. Understood. I hung up. Not out of vengeance, at least not yet. It was about boundaries. The first one I had drawn in years. For the first time since Ethan died, I felt a flicker of control return. That afternoon I returned to the house. Not through the front, but by circling the block and slipping in through the backyard. The side door had always been fussy. Ethan meant to fix the latch but never got around to it. I knew how to slip it open without a sound. The air inside smelled different, artificial. Lavender air fresheners in every outlet. My framed photos were gone, replaced with bland landscapes. The throw pillows were rearranged. Ethan's blanket was missing from the couch. His coffee mug was gone. No trace of him. I didn't have time to cry. I moved quickly toward his office, a small room tucked between the guest bath and laundry, always cluttered with wires, papers, and the faint scent of his cologne. Diana hated this room, called it Ethan's mess, which is why I knew she wouldn't have touched it. I was right. It was untouched, chaotic and perfect. Paper stacks, USB drives, receipts, cords. I let the silence sink in around me, then started searching. I didn't know what I was looking for. A signature? A memory? A tether? Then I saw it. A slim black folder wedged between two old instruction manuals, his handwriting on the front block letters in blue ink, postnup, do not discard. My hands froze. We had never signed a prenup. We got married in our 30s, broke but in love. Ethan said legal paperwork ruined romance. But a postnup. I opened it slowly. 3 pages, legal letterhead, dated 2 weeks after our second anniversary. My name. His name. Witness signatures. 1 line highlighted in yellow. In the event of the husband's passing, all jointly owned assets, including real estate, shall transfer wholly to Lillian Whitaker, unless otherwise stated in a legal will. There was no will. But this was binding. Tucked at the back was a folded note, handwritten. "If you're reading this, something awful happened. If Mom tries anything, show this to your lawyer. You know how she is. Keep this safe, E." It was the first time I'd seen his handwriting since the hospital. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. That evening, back at the motel, I didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't from grief. It was from clarity. I stayed up all night reading the postnup over and over until the words no longer blurred. By sunrise, I had called Angela Flores, my old college roommate who had gone into real estate law. We hadn't spoken in years, but she picked up on the second ring. "Lillian," she asked, and I broke into tears for the first time in days. By noon, we had a meeting set for the following afternoon. But before that meeting could happen, someone found me first. Wednesday, late morning, a knock on the motel door. 3 quick raps sharp, entitled. I peeked through the curtain. Diana. She was dressed in all black, like she had walked straight off a soap opera set. Standing next to her was a man in a gray suit, square jaw, clipboard in hand. I knew before she even introduced him, her lawyer. I didn't invite them in. Instead, I zipped up my coat, grabbed the black folder, and stepped outside. We met in the parking lot. The wind whipped her scarf sideways. "Lillian," she said with a forced smile. "This is Mr. Langley, our family attorney. We're here to discuss next steps regarding the house." "Next steps?" I repeated. "Yes," she continued, in that same polished tone. "Since Ethan left no will, his estate, including the house, must be handled through probate. As his mother and sister, we are entitled to our share under the law." I didn't flinch. I'm his wife. The only legal spouse. Mr. Langley cleared his throat. "What Mrs. Whitaker means is that, in the absence of testamentary directives, certain next of kin have legal standing. I interrupted. I'm actually glad you're both here. Saves me a trip. I held up the black folder. Diana's face flickered. This is a notarized postnuptial agreement, I said clearly. Signed 3 years ago. Witnessed. Filed on legal letterhead. It transfers all shared marital assets to me in the event of Ethan's death. Langley reached out. May I see? No, I said, stepping back. You'll get a copy through proper channels. I've retained legal counsel. Diana's mask cracked. You're bluffing, she hissed. Am I? I asked, my voice even. Because if I am, you should be thrilled. Go back to your car and celebrate. But if I'm not, then you've committed trespassing, unlawful entry, and tampered with property that doesn't belong to you. Langley stepped away from her subtle but obvious. You don't get to win this time, she snapped, her voice low. You were never part of this family. You stole my son. He wasn't a trophy, I replied. He was a man, and I didn't steal him. You pushed him away the moment he stopped living by your script. I turned my back and walked into the motel, locking the door behind me. From the window I watched them leave. Diana stiff and seething, Langley awkward and flustered. They didn't knock again. But I knew they weren't finished. By Friday, the motel room felt like it had absorbed all my grief. I sat at the fold-out table with a cold cup of coffee and Ethan's post-nup folder beside me, trying to finalize the funeral arrangements, when I noticed the envelope no stamp, no return address slid quietly under my door, sometime during the night. Inside was a letter from the Chatham County Probate Court. Respondent, Lillian Whitaker, it read. Diana had filed a formal petition challenging the validity of the postnuptial agreement. She claimed that Ethan had been under undue influence and emotional coercion when he signed it, that I had manipulated him while he was vulnerable. She was trying to rewrite who he was and who we were. I called Angela immediately. She's saying I forced him to sign, I said flat. Angela's voice was steady. That's what people do when they have no legal footing. They sling mud and hope something sticks. It's not just about the house, I whispered. She wants to erase everything. Us. No, Angela corrected. She wants control. That afternoon I received a text from an old contact, James Harding, Ethan's former business partner. Hey Lil, I don't want to get involved, but Diana reached out, he wrote. She asked if Ethan had any memory issues. Wanted proof he was confused before he died. My stomach twisted. Diana was building a narrative. If she could convince the court that Ethan lacked mental capacity, she could unravel the postnup. And I had nothing, no medical reports, no testimony, until I remembered something Ethan said 3 months before he died. I got a neurology appointment next week, he had mentioned casually, just to rule some stuff out. Probably nothing. I scrambled to the suitcase, ripped through old mail, and there it was, an envelope from St. Michael's Neurology Clinic, unopened. Inside was a letter addressed to Ethan, dated 3 months before his death. Dear Mr. Whitaker, it began. Following your recent cognitive assessment, we are pleased to inform you that your results fall within the normal range. No signs of early cognitive decline were detected. It was the proof we needed. Monday morning arrived 1 week after Ethan died. The courthouse was cold and cavernous. Angela met me on the steps, folder in hand, eyes sharp. You ready? She asked. I am, I said. And for the first time I meant it. Inside, Diana sat in the front row, dressed in dramatic black lace. Josie beside her, eyes lowered. Mr. Langley stood at their table. Angela and I took our place across from them. Langley went first. His voice soft, calculated. He described Ethan as emotionally vulnerable, said the postnup raised questions. Diana dabbed her eyes at the perfect moment. Then Angela stood. She didn't perform. She presented. One by one, the postnup, the mortgage records in my name, Ethan's signed neurologist report. She ended with one sentence. This confirms Mr. Whitaker's full mental capacity 3 months prior to his death. The room fell silent. The judge adjusted her glasses. Do you have medical testimony to the contrary? Langley stammered. No, Your Honor. Then this agreement stands, the judge ruled. The property belongs to Mrs. Whitaker. Case dismissed. The gavel fell, sharp, final. Outside the courthouse, the sky was impossibly blue. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just breathed. The chapel smelled like lilies and cedar polish. It was Tuesday, exactly 1 week after Ethan's heart gave out. The service had been scheduled for noon, but by 11:15, the pews were already filling. Friends, neighbors, old clients, some drove in from Atlanta, others from Charleston. Many hadn't seen us in years, but they came. "I'm so sorry," they whispered as they hugged me. "He talked about your garden all the time. Said you were the only calm he ever knew." I nodded, smiled softly, swallowed the lump in my throat again and again. Angela arrived just before 11:30 and sat near the front. Not as my attorney today, but as a friend. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The urn sat on a small table wrapped in blue velvet, Ethan's favorite color. I had chosen it myself. And then I saw them. 2 silhouettes slipped into the back pew quietly, discreetly, but I saw. I was watching. Diana and Josie, dressed in black, coordinated like a stage performance, hair pinned. Veils subtle but dramatic, mourning costumes, theater. They weren't on the guest list. I had made sure of that. The funeral home had promised to turn them away, but someone must have looked the other way for just a moment. And now they were here, sitting, pretending, as if they hadn't tried to erase him, as if they had earned a place in this goodbye. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, not from grief but fury. Angela noticed. "Want me to handle it?" she whispered. I shook my head. No, this was mine to do. I rose slowly, walked down the aisle. Every heel click echoed through the silence. Heads turned. The music paused. Even the minister stepped aside, sensing something sacred was about to unfold. I reached the back pew. Diana looked up, smile faint. Josie avoided my gaze. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, softly but firmly. "We're not leaving," Diana replied, voice tight. "I gave birth to him." "Then you should have respected his wishes," I said. "I'm his wife. The only one he chose." "You can't stop me from mourning my own son," she said. "You're not mourning," I said quietly. "You're performing." She blinked. "I'll walk out right now," I added, "and take the minister with me. We'll finish the service in a park, a diner, anywhere. But you will not sit here and pretend you didn't try to erase him." Silence. Then Josie's voice broke through. "Mom," she whispered, still not looking up, "let's go." Diana turned, stunned. "We're not wanted here," Josie added. "Let's stop pretending." She rose. Diana hesitated but followed. No screaming, no scene, just 2 pairs of heels clicking against stone as they left. I returned to the front. The music resumed. The minister nodded. I stood beside Ethan's urn, placed my hand on the velvet, and began to speak. No liars, no masks, just love, just truth. For the first time since he died, I felt peace. The day after the funeral, the house was still. Not quiet, still. The kind of stillness that waits, that watches. I stood in the kitchen wearing Ethan's old sweatshirt, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I hadn't moved. Outside the window, the garden was nothing but turned soil and dry air. Bare, like me. I turned around slowly, half expecting to see him at the table humming something off-key, feet propped on the chair like he always did. But the chair was empty. The mug was his. The silence was mine. I'd survived court, survived the funeral, but I hadn't stopped waiting for the next shoe to drop. So when I looked out the front window and saw Diana's car parked across the street, I wasn't surprised. It was early. Barely 7 a.m. The engine off, windows half rolled. A thin trail of cigarette smoke curled into the morning light. She didn't get out. Didn't knock. She just watched. I didn't flinch. I didn't call Angela. I didn't take a photo. I just walked outside barefoot, mug in hand, hair undone, and stood on the porch. I met her eyes. She flicked her cigarette out the window. The engine rumbled to life. Then she drove away. No threats, no shouting, just a retreat. A quiet reminder I still exist. But I already knew that. She didn't haunt me anymore. That afternoon, I found Ethan's old gardening notebook. The one filled with scribbles and sketches, messy plans for a backyard we never fully finished. On the last page, taped next to a packet of marigold seeds, was a note. "One day, when you're ready." I wasn't ready, but I went outside anyway. I dug where he'd marked, planted every seed, watered them gently, sat beside them as the sun went down. And when I came back inside, I found another envelope. No return address, no handwriting, just 6 words printed on a plain white sheet. This house will always be mine. I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed, not bitterly, just lightly, like something had finally unlatched. She had nothing left. No case, no keys, no power. Just 6 empty words from a woman who had already been removed from my will, my wedding, and my life. I took the letter outside, dug a small hole under the marigold bed, buried it deep, fertilized it. Maybe something good would grow from it. Then I whispered, "You don't haunt me anymore." And I went inside and made cinnamon tea. Ethan always said grief needed something sweet. Spring came early that year. The garden grew fast. Marigolds, mint, rosemary, lavender, green things pushing through the dirt, stubborn and soft all at once. I reopened my design business not from desperation but choice. Clients came in slowly. A grieving widow who wanted to repaint her kitchen. A young woman starting over. A couple building a sunroom for orchids. They didn't know my story, but in each of them I saw echoes of my own. And every night I sat on the bench beneath the maple tree Ethan once loved, wrapped in his flannel, watching the garden grow. Not to mourn,